All right, we've got a new space sci-fi thriller that just came out in theaters, and this one's also rated R, and it has a little bit of an end-of-the-world dynamic to it as well. I'll be diving deeper into all this stuff as today I talk about the new movie, I.S.S. All right, so the plot of I.S.S. goes a little something like this. The film centers around a group of 3 American astronauts and 3 Russian cosmonauts who share the International Space Station. Most of them have become kind of like family up there. But then, suddenly a worldwide conflict breaks out on Earth between the US and Russia. Then the group receives orders from each of their countries on the ground to take control of the station by any means necessary. Personally, I'm a sucker for pretty much anything space, sci-fi related, especially when they go for a little bit more of an adult feel to it with this thriller or horror tone. Like Alien from 1979, one of my favorite sci-fi movies ever made. And yes, like I mentioned a second ago, this movie is an rated R sci-fi movie. However, there's really only a couple small moments in the movie that I feel like justify that R rating. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But first, let's get into some of my positives and negatives in I.S.S. All right, the first positive that I want to mention is I feel like the movie does a great job showing real and believable emotions in certain scenes with these characters, and emotions that are just relatable. Like, for example, there's a scene where one of the characters has to go outside of the space station in a spacesuit in order to fix something. And both the way it's written and the actor, I feel like, do a great job of just showing how somebody would really feel about having to do something like this. It's clearly not something that happens every day, and I feel like they do a great job showing just the nervousness and anxiety in scenes like that, instead of just having somebody stroll out there trying to be cool and tough, like, yep, it's just me in a spacesuit out here in atmosphere, just, just another Tuesday. I also thought smartly the writing painted a picture for most of the characters early on, what they do or don't have to live for back on Earth. Some characters talk a lot about their kids, how they can't wait to get back to them, kind of video chat with them and all that kind of stuff. And other people are just kind of like, honestly, I don't have really anything back there, so I'm kind of down to be up here for a while. I thought the movie executed that well and also weaved that into the later stages of the movie well. And like I've already mentioned a couple times, this movie is rated R, so we actually do get some decent gore in the movie, which I enjoy because I'm a little bit of a weirdo, but to me, some of the gore means that you're just going with like a realness and a rawness to the movie, and you're showing what would really happen. Plus, the gore in this movie to me wasn't too over the top. I felt like it fit into the tone and just the overall feel of the movie. I also thought there was some genuine good tension in the second half of the movie. Even my mom, who I saw this with, leaned over to me a couple times and said, this is really intense. I also just really like stories like this where they start to kind of explore real human nature when shit really goes down. Like there's a little bit of an evil in all of us that could come out when the circumstances are perfectly right, no matter how much people try to deny that all of us probably have a little bit of evil in us, some more than others. But I think the movie does a good job exploring that, and that's just generally something I enjoy watching. And my last positive that I want to mention is one concern that I usually have when there's a new space movie is how is it going to look, right? And I can't really think of a single thing that necessarily looked bad in this movie. I thought overall the CGI was effective. Yes, there's going to be a lot of green screen, blue screen stuff in this movie, but overall I just thought it looked pretty good. To pull off the anti-gravity stuff inside of the space station, they had to put the actors on wires and stuff. And I thought overall, that was one of the weaker probably parts of the kind of special effects, but it still looked pretty damn good throughout most of the movie. And I also thought the movie knew what its limits were. They clearly didn't try to bite off more than they can chew in post. And overall, just the CGI and the effects in general, I thought looked pretty solid. All right, now on to the negative. Now, I did just mention the movie did a good job kind of knowing its limitations, but I will say I wish there was maybe 1 or 2 big, shocking, kind of epic moments in this movie. Maybe just one scene with a big explosion or something, just something that's very abrupt that would kind of make you say, holy shit. I personally would have enjoyed that, and I think it would have been a huge shock to the system for a movie that creates most of its tension kind of just thematically and subtly in a way. Another negative for me is I thought the movie was way too obvious with these little things and these little nuances that they clearly showed you for a second, that they were obviously going to tie into the later stages of the movie. Like, for example, they mentioned one character used to be a Marine for a minute, and it was like, I wonder if they're going to use some of that Marine combat training later on in the movie. There's also a moment where they show this little trinket for a second, and you're like, why would they mention that unless they're going to tie that in later in the movie? Pretty damn obvious. Maybe that's only something that people who watch a lot of movies like I do would notice, but it was just very obvious and kind of silly in a way because you're like, come on now. I know you're going to tie that in somehow later on in the movie. And then when that moment comes and you see the thing or you kind of get that hint that it's going to happen, you're like, okay, here it comes. So it's kind of predictable and kind of like loses the moment for me. And the last negative that I want to mention is that although overall I liked this cast, I thought the guy who played Euron Greyjoy in Game of Thrones was great in this, and some of the others were too. And although Ariana DeBose did an okay job in her role, I felt like I didn't love her character and how some of the moments played out on the screen for her character. I thought she came across as like a little bit smug at times. She wasn't even really trying all that hard to fit in with the other people or even really be all that friendly. Yet this is supposed to be the character we're supposed to like and root for throughout the movie. I also thought her backstory was a huge miss for me. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I've only seen the movie once, but I believe the movie essentially said she had nothing waiting for her back home in a sense. And in an end-of-the-world movie like this, I feel like your main character needs to have something at home waiting for her, something big that she wants to get back to. Because then at the end of the movie, whether they die or whether they live, it's just going to be way more impactful in my opinion. Like take another sci-fi movie like Armageddon. Bruce Willis or even Ben Affleck's character have a lot to live for back home, so it makes the story and what plays out in the movie have that much bigger stakes and it's way more intense. I think here with some of the characters, they could have done a better job building the backstory of the characters and just kind of showing what's at home. They could have shown little clips of what is actually at home on Earth, or just simply just FaceTiming with these family members or whoever else is waiting for them back home, I think would have been very impactful. Hell, they even mentioned like video chatting in the movie several times. They should have just used that a little bit to kind of build that up a little bit so that way at the end of the movie, whatever happens to the character, if they do end up surviving or if they do end up dying, it's just more impactful. And to me, like I mentioned, I just felt like that was a big miss in the movie. But regardless of the negatives that I just mentioned, I think this is a solid January movie, and I'm just happy that they're pumping out unique R-rated sci-fi movies. I think that's pretty cool. And overall, I.S.S., I enjoyed the movie. I thought it had some very, very tense moments. Overall, the characters were pretty good. The performances were pretty damn solid as well. And I just had a good time. And it was definitely a solid January movie to me. Yes, I'm a bit of a sci-fi sucker, like I mentioned before. So maybe if you're not, you might want to pass on this. But in my opinion, I think this is actually a movie that would be very good to see in the theater, which is obviously what I did, because some of those tense moments rely so much on the visuals and kind of the suffocating feeling on the station. So I think it's very effective in a theater setting, and I would recommend seeing it in the theaters. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed I.S.S. But that is it for me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my review of I.S.S. Let me know down in the comments down below if you've already seen I.S.S. and what you thought about the movie. Go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me if you want more content from me right now. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.